Welcome back to the Spatial Connection podcast, where we explore the fascinating journeys of geospatial professionals and discuss the incredible ways location-based technologies are shaping our world. I'm your host, Kelly McGee, and in this episode, we talk with Dr. Stacey Brown, the chair of the Geography Department at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Listen as we discover how she went from just wanting to go to a large university to now being the chair of a geography department within a large university. We'll also learn about what it takes to actually design and manage a program. Welcome back to everybody that's come back to the podcast. Today we have Dr. Brown Emilian from SIUE, and this is going to be a really excellent podcast to put you on the hook. Just because of the fact just because we get a chance to talk about something a little bit different. You know, I invited you to the podcast mainly because of the fact that I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, your background. I think that's interesting. How do you get to the position that you're at? And also, how is a geography program established? You know, and what kind of things do you have to think about when you're designing courses? And how do you work with the students? How do you get the students prepared? So I'm going to kind of let you drive a lot of that and go from there, and we'll kind of hit topics as they go along. So where did you get your start? What got you into geography, and what was your educational background to get you to SIUE? And, you know, we'll kind of go from that point.
Okay. Well, first, thanks again for having me on the show. I'm happy to be here. So I grew up in a really small town in Oklahoma, a town near Ardmore called Healton. Whenever I graduated high school, I wanted to go to one of the big universities. And so at that point, it was either OU or Oklahoma State. So I toured both places, and I absolutely fell in love with Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And so I, go into the previews and all that, those kind of things, and pick your major kind of deal. And I've always wanted to be a doctor. And so I was like, well, let's go chemical engineering and pre-med.
Oh, really?
So I was really excited about doing all that. And then the first day of the semester, I sat in some classes and I thought, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. And then the second day, it was even worse. And so I just became an undeclared College of Arts and Science major.
That was a quick change.
It was a very quick change. But I stayed in a couple of the classes, and I really appreciated being able to explore at college.
Yes.
Right. So I took math classes. I love math. So I thought, well, maybe I'll be a math major. And then once I got into the 5-hour calculus class, I was like, nope, not happening. And I thought about business, but I wasn't really keen on that. And so I just kind of started, I was working with my advisors, and they were just mentioning these geography classes, how they take a lot of these things. And so I remember taking physical geography, and we went on a fun field trip and saw caves and sand dunes in Oklahoma, and I was like, wow, this is really neat. And so I just sort of kept taking geography classes, and I kept exploring, and I kept exposing myself to different things. And then it was time for me to actually have to pick a major. And I realized that, wait a minute, I can do all the things that I want to do with geography. I can incorporate math into it with doing statistics. I can think about business aspects with economic geography. I can think about places in general with any kind of regional course or whatever. I can think about migration, right? You can look at cemeteries and kind of understand where people are coming from, right? We can trace migration and histories with all of that. And so the more and more I started taking those advanced courses, and then I found GIS. And I remember still, to this day, sitting in one of the computer labs, and I coded a calculator. Like, I made a calculator do what it was supposed to do with just code. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is something, right? And so even though I loved my physical geography course, I really was interested in people and, again, businesses and all of that. So I was definitely more of the human geographer side of things. But even as a 20-year-old, I knew that GIS was really something special. And that, being a female in the late 90s in the profession, having those computer skills, having the math skills, somewhere in my brain told me, you got to keep at this, because you're going to be really marketable if you keep this up.
That's one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize is that additional skills, math and computers, is a great complementary skill.
Exactly. And so then, of course, I was happy with my major. I got an economics minor and I had a GIS certificate. And then it was time to think about a job. At that time, again, in the late 90s, early 2000s in Oklahoma, it was going to be a lot of pipeline mapping. And that was not something that I wanted to do. And so I started looking around for a master's program, and I found a focus of location analysis. So analyzing locations.
Okay.
Why are car dealers all along the same route, right? Why are hotels all along the same location? And sure enough, there was a program, and it still exists. It's at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And so when I graduated with my Bachelor of Science degree, I moved out to Charlotte, North Carolina, got my master's.
Okay.
And fell in love with that city and just felt so proud of myself for making that decision. And so learned a lot more, did a lot more of the GIS courses, did more of the quantitative techniques and really kind of honing my math skills and those kinds of things. And one of our assignments was to find a newspaper article. Again, this is early 2000s, so we still had print paper. And we had to find a newspaper article on a geographic topic.
Okay.
And in the Charlotte paper at the time, and I actually still have this, which is kind of great.
Still have the paper?
I still have the newspaper clipping because this is what started it all. So it was about Hispanics and Latinos having worse access to grocery stores in Charlotte. And I was like, well, that's a geographic problem right there, right? And I was like, well, I can map that. I can do stats on that. I can do that. And so that was what I chose for my thesis research, and found just some really fascinating things. And I was really gung-ho, and so I finished early. I think I defended my thesis on April 1st.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a, let's see here if I can remember it, International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC. I don't know if it still exists anymore, but they hold a conference in Miami. And I just finished this thesis, and I was like, well, I'll go present down in Miami. Why not?
Oh, yeah, you got good material.
Good material, lo and behold, there were a lot of industry folks there, and 2 people from the Walgreens Corporation saw my presentation, and we ended up chit-chatting over appetizers and hors d'oeuvres. And next thing I know, I was applying for a job as a market analyst for the Walgreens Corporation. Ended up getting that job, and I moved to Chicago right after I finished my master's program. So I lived in the Deerfield area and worked for Walgreens.
So you changed a lot of geography. Oklahoma. That's okay.
Oklahoma, North Carolina, Illinois, yeah. And so I started working there and seeing this enormous company and the amount of data they had and just the maps that we could make was just amazing. And we would get to travel all over the place and, again, use our maps and use our resources and drive around cities and just kind of get a feel for places. And it was just spectacular.
So you're finding out maps are more than just road networks and how to get from point A to point B.
Exactly. And where in a neighborhood or in a new division should we build a store? Or where is that retail pockets going, And so I loved that aspect of the work. But what I really, really loved was helping the new employees. And because of my geography and GIS background, I was really quick to pick up on what can I do with these maps and what can I do and all these things. And I really loved, again, training those new employees. And it was, I think, just under 2 years into my time at Walgreens, the Association of American Geographers had their conference in Chicago, just down the road. And I was already kind of thinking, I'm not sure if corporate America is for me, right? I'm in a big, huge city. I'm a Southern girl. I kind of want to get back to my roots a little bit. I was like, well, I don't know if this is the right place for me. And I go into this geography conference and I hear all these conversations about, as you know, all the things that geographers can do, right? And I remember, and this might be cheesy, but whatever. I was like, I'm home. This is where I belong. In those conversations, in that geography sphere, not in that business sphere and corporate America sphere. And so I ran into my old instructors and old professors at Oklahoma State. They had a brand new PhD program. So I think the day I got back, or the minute I got back to my apartment, I filled out an application and I realized I want to teach and I want to mentor people and talk to them about how great geography is and how you can really find your place, right? If you're a math person, we have an opportunity. If you are creative, right? Make some creative maps. Do all the things that you can do.
All the different ideas that can...
All those different ideas, all your different thoughts, right? Even if you love zombies, you can do geography because it's distance decay, right? Yeah. Where are there going to be more people? Where do you need to go, right? I mean, it's all of those things. You can do it all. And so I go back to Oklahoma State and spend 5 years there getting my PhD. And I'm proud to say that I was the first female PhD with geography.
Oh, wow.
And then I was the 7th overall PhD that was granted a PhD. So, yeah, it was great. And again, I really, and so what was interesting was I took a lot of those concepts and the topics that we kind of thought about to promote a business setting. And I thought, well, I can still do that in things of a location, right? Like if I think I want to do a site selection, I can still do those kinds of things. But then it got me thinking more, well, what makes a place healthy? Mm-hmm. Are there certain things that are not in our control, right? We know that we aren't supposed to smoke or we're not supposed to drink and we're not supposed to eat bad food, but we all probably do that a little bit. But like, what are there things in the environment? Is there things on the built environment that can either enhance or detract from our health? So things like sidewalks, right? Being safe to cross a road or even walk, right? Even having a safe place to walk. What about what types of stores? Right? What types of food do you have available? Yes. Do you have a grocery store or do you have a dollar store? Right?
So this goes back to your North Carolina?
It goes all the way back to the roots that I found for the food desert thing. And so I sort of focused on the health geography side of things. So medical and health geography, and really thought about how can I, as a geographer and as a GIS user, how can I build those layers of all these things that, you know, maybe there are these toxic things. Are they really contributing to bad health, or is it just an anecdotal type of a thing, right? Pulling in census data, thinking like poverty and education and race and even age of housing. How is that of an impact for maybe asthma cases, right?
So and now you get to put that spatial component to it.
Exactly.
To do that statistical analysis.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was one of the things that again, that little voice inside my head was like, you're a human geographer and you can use GIS, right? This is a unique skill set for you. And so as I was finishing up with the PhD program and starting to look at job opportunities, I saw here at SIUE, and I immediately saw a connection that I could maybe work with the nursing school. I could work with pharmacy, right? Having a human geographer that does GIS, it could be a different perspective in classes and different assignments that we do, right? That you're thinking about those people and pulling in all the different data that we can. And luckily I got the job. And so I'm happy to admit that this will be the start of my 15th year at SIUE. Wow. So yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to have a lot of support from the faculty when I was just starting out, and I was able to teach medical geography, and I've created a new course for that. And then I teach GIS for medical geography. So we use a lot of health data and especially hospital discharge data. Because as you know, right, a lot of times we get things and they're nice and pretty and clean and you could just use them.
Right.
And in reality, we know that that is not the truth. And so again, kind of being able to pull that spatial component into health and look at, you know, there's this anecdotal thing around here that nobody really likes the hospitals on this side of the river. So they all go across the river, right? And so that proved a challenge because you have to go to the public health departments to get the discharge data, right? And so I have contacts at Illinois and I have contact in Missouri. And if we don't include Missouri, we lose about 10% of the health issues.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the things, especially for listeners that aren't familiar with where SIUE, we're just on the east side in Illinois from St. Louis. So being in that St. Louis metropolitan area, we have access to both the Illinois and Missouri, and a lot of the community either are traveling to or from
Yes.
for the work or what have
Yes.
you.
The bi-state region really does, it's a unique case study, a unique study area, if you will, but it also brings its challenges, right? Because you can't just rely on one state's data
Right.
or one community's data. You have to really think about, like, wait a minute, there is a lot of movement across the river
Yes.
to go to St. Louis and over here, right? And on the opposite way, maybe not so much for healthcare or other things, but it definitely
And
exists.
it impacts the funding side. You know, you have St. Louis, which is a major metropolitan area, where on our side you have more smaller communities which don't have the
Exactly.
same funding mechanism. So when you look at from a hospital perspective, yeah, those hospitals have a lot more contributing funds going on that side. So that's interesting to think about that geography piece of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now 15 years. So so right now you're the chair of the geography
I am.
department. And when did you become chair?
So I became chair July 1 of 2023, which is
Okay.
also the same time that I became a full professor too. So
Awesome.
yeah,
So now you've got a couple of years under your belt.
I do.
I think listening to your story there is interesting. I know when I got involved with geography many years ago, people always saw geography as when you say, I'm learning geography. The question they would ask you is, what's the capital of? And that people had that very narrow viewpoint of what
Sure.
geography is. And just listening to you talk, there's so many different aspects and areas of focus within geography. You know, you're talking about medical geography. You know, there's economic geography. We talked about that earlier. That was one of the courses that I never thought of, and when I took it, it was like mind opening. You know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, even without the GIS industry as it is nowadays, there's so many different areas that people and students can focus in geography alone.
Oh yeah.
And I think that also allows for students to tie in other interests, as you well know. I mean, you kind of went
Yes.
that route. You're able to tie in something that you might have multiple interests,
Right.
math,
Right.
economics, what have you. So now as a chair of the geography department, what's it like to have to manage a department? What is it that you have to think about, and how do you decide what courses, and you know, and how much
Sure.
do you draw on your past experience that you decide what you can have?
So it's interesting you say that, because whenever you start out as a faculty member, and I will just say this from my own perspective, so I want to clarify that. You know, when you're going into school, and especially when you're going to PhD, it's a very selfish, right? You have to really work hard and what you want to do, and you have to be selfish, right? You've got to be the one to, like, I have to do this research, or I have to do this, or I've got to get my dissertation finished so I can get the job, right?
There's nobody pushing you.
Right, exactly. So to me, at least, when I was beginning, I was trying to figure out new location, you know, meeting my colleagues, becoming friends with people, a new area, right? You're moving to a new place, so it's all new.
Right.
You're going from graduate student to now you're the professor, you know, and so you're still kind of in that graduate student mentality, but yet you're in charge, kind of, at least of your classes. And so you really do sort of want to create your own roadmap, if you will. And I noticed, and so I got tenured and promoted a few years before COVID.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was COVID itself or just the timing of my career, but I realize now, like, hey, I don't have to just go. I can actually think about, what do I want to do now? And who do I want to partner with? And what do I want my legacy to be? Or what do I want my research to be, right? And so I did a lot more with professional organizations. I became involved with the Illinois Geographical Society, started joining their board and going to their conferences and learning more about the state that I was in and bringing students along to those conferences. And then when I became, you know, right a little bit while I was going up through professor, and then the thought of me becoming chair, it was really a great moment, at least in my career, where I can now start thinking, okay, what puzzle pieces, where do we need to either find those puzzle pieces, or where are those puzzle pieces already working?
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And at least for, again, because we're all kind of doing our own thing in terms of the different faculty, and I'm assuming this is true for everybody. What's been really fun as chair is to get a glimpse of what everybody's doing, right? So like we have a couple folks that do a lot of geography education. And then we have folks that do a lot of remote sensing and a lot of agricultural work. I'm getting to understand more of that now.
Wasn't your focus.
Where it wasn't, okay. Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of on my own road.
Right.
They're all doing their other things, and now I can see the bigger picture. And so now I can think about, well, this student was really good at this. Maybe they could work here, or maybe this could be an interesting topic. Or, and of course, mentoring students and helping students finish up has just been icing on the cake. I'm 14 years in. I've helped many graduate students finish up, but I think SAUE is maybe unique in some cases that we have to do a senior assignment. So for geography, it's a year-long process, and you start with an 8-week class, which I think you talked to Dr. Who's class, and those students have to come up with a topic all on their own. So they've gone 3 years or so, maybe a year in our program if they've transferred in from a community college, and they have to decide what they want to do. And we are, as assigned as mentors, we can help them along the way, but it's really, they're self-guided, right? And I have been so lucky to have been able to mentor over 50 students in my time as undergrads. And again, running the gamut from traffic-related asthma to, again, the zombie and distance decays and zombies, and of course, for food deserts and food access and healthcare access. I mean, it's just icing on the cake. Probably. And it makes me very, very happy that I listened to that little voice and I focused on what I really loved about the job that I was in at Walgreens.
I was going to say, it's a very strong tie there.
Yeah, and I realized that's where my passion is, and I'm really proud that I could have followed that passion. And I've been able to do that for really almost 20 years now.
Makes an exciting career, doesn't it?
It doesn't make you want to stop anytime soon.
Right. Some people always look forward to what they're retiring. They know the date. I'll worry about that later.
But you mentioned about, as chair, again, I get to know more of what's happening in terms of my faculty and their research and then student research. But it is also, what does the workforce need, right?
Pretty much so, yes.
Again, one of the things that I'm really proud about being at SAUE is we teach a wide variety of students, wide variety of ages, and we are able to hopefully get them to where they need to be in terms of a profession. And at least for our department, we have really tried to keep up with what the industry needs. And one of those big decisions was a few years ago, we switched over to RGS Pro really early. So we do use Esri products, but we made the decision to focus on Pro.
It's where it was going to go.
It was where it was going to go. And again, we have people and students that go to conferences and they saw the writing on the wall, right? I think there are some that are looking a little more at the open source and some different ideas. But again, though, one of the things I think is so good about SAUE, and again, we're kind of maybe training the workforce. It might not be the right way to think about it, but we are definitely an applied program that the things that you're learning, you can apply it, again, to a business degree, yes, to a history degree, to an anthropology degree, whatever you want, you could bring in geographical skills, right? And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that we don't just teach the software, right? We don't just tell somebody, make a map for us, right? We make them think about, okay, what did you learn in your human geography class? What did you learn in that economic geography class?
What is that map going to tell you?
What about biogeography, right? Yeah. How do we think about all these different things that we learn throughout our time together at SAUE? How can we put all of that together? And so, yes, we think of GIS as a tool, but it's not the end-all be-all, right? You have to know all those little things going into it, like, what is the most important thing for this plant to survive, yes, right? What is it about X.
What layers are you going to put in your GIS to answer any questions?
Exactly. So that to me, I think, is one of our strengths that I'm really happy that we, again, kind of think about what's happening with industry and then just also kind of meet students where they need to be.
And I think that's important because students are going to struggle with, they don't know what the industry needs. They don't know what's out there. They don't know what questions they have. So they're going to look to professors and say, okay, hey, how do I apply this outside?
Right.
And having that ability to kind of share your past experience and understanding what the connections are with current industry, that's where they're going to get that ideas.
So we've done a really great job of training students. We have such a great amount of alumni in our workforce. The thing that I am concerned about is how quickly things are changing.
And when you say things changing, what
like GeoAI,
okay,
right? I mean, all of us know how many updates there are all the time to software.
Yes.
And because the industry itself is changing, it seems to be changing a lot. It is a concern for a lot of us that are in those technology classes and those geospatial courses to make sure that we are still teaching the relevant information. And so because we want to stay relevant and continue to produce really good students and really good future employees, one of the things that I really hope to do is get out and talk to industry leaders. And, is ArcGIS Pro still the main thing? Do we need to start bringing in more Arc Online or QGIS or some of these other open source platforms? Do we need to think about more of the higher level analyses or making sure we still teach the digitizing and all those basic skills that might actually be those entry-level positions, but yet they need to kind of be at least exposed to maybe the high-level GeoAI, right?
Well, I think that's a very interesting concept because of the fact that, yes, technology is changing, but I think one of the things more importantly is it's not that it's changing. It's always been changing. It's the rate at which it's changing.
Yes.
And when we bring in AI, that just changes it ramps up the speed of it a little bit more because now people can answer questions faster.
Right.
You mentioned before about newspapers. Hey, things were still in print. When I first started my journey back to go do my master's program, I had to take a research methods class again. And at first I was like, I don't understand that. But from the first time I took that class to the second time I took that class, we now had the internet. Mm-hmm. That changed, that technology changed how we did everything. Mm-hmm. And so that technology didn't change what needed to be done or what had to be learned. It was how you did that.
Right.
And since that time, technology's just changed faster and faster. Yeah. You mentioned the how often we get updates. Before it'd be like every couple of years you might get a new version and you'd have to uninstall that. And then it got to where you could upgrade your current one and it was a big deal. And now you just leave your device on overnight and it's getting an update automatically. Right. That was never conceived before. So my thought on that is it's not so much about how do you keep up with technology, because technology is always going to change. You've got to do that. But there's one underlying piece to that is the concepts.
Yes.
It doesn't matter, and from a GIS standpoint, I use both commercial, ArcGIS and open source QGIS from a desktop perspective. It doesn't matter which one of those I use. It's still the concept. I still have to know how to answer the question. I have to understand what the question is. But you do have to give that we have to teach some technology, and it does make it very challenging to do. So I can feel that problem.
Yeah. Also, one of the things I'm really proud of our department is we are teaching the Python programming class.
Good.
And of course, you can take other scripting languages and that sort of thing like that. But I think that Python class, having that class be in a heavy rotation, I think that's been a really good, again, listening to what the industry needs, seeing what's happening, right? Think about how much data is available now, right?
And it doesn't matter the discipline.
No, exactly. And so I still feel like I kind of create maps that can be static and I don't really need to update them because I'm kind of talking about one little thing, or here are these, here are all the dollar stores in 2022 or 2023, right? I could probably figure out how to continuously update that, but that's not necessarily something that I have to do.
Right.
But potentially somebody like yourself or other companies like an agricultural company, anytime that new satellite passes over, you have to figure out what's changed and what's updated. Or think about wildfires, right? We almost need to have some of these automated, those things that can update overnight for us.
Right.
And that Python scripting language can really help do that. And I think that, right, I think even some of that concept in terms of, right, does this map work for now?
Right.
But it's also now like you almost have to have these maps that will continuously change with what the data tells you, right?
Because our data, along with that, is not just data now. That data is changing, and we have the quantity of it coming in so fast now that how do you keep up with that? So the technology's got to keep up with that.
Exactly.
So it's a very never-ending cycle there.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, again, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that we really do, this might be overused a little bit, but we really do teach the holistic approach, right? People have to take human geography. They have to take physical geography. They have to take those electives that they may not really care about, right? But they're going to learn something eventually about it. And then they have those technique options.
Yes.
And so I still think that the way that we have done this program, and especially with the GIS piece, we're doing the best we can at the moment.
You have a limited amount of time, too.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's not going to stay around for 10 years to get a bachelor's degree.
And to keep up with all those changes, right?
I may have done that, but, right. It's one of those things you want students to learn something that they can get out into the industry within a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, they're also in that gap.
Right.
So it is very challenging. I can see that.
But, though, like you mentioned, knowing what a shapefile is, knowing what is remote sensing, what is a remotely sensed image, how would you explain that? How would you find these things out? The one thing I remember from when I interviewed at Walgreens, they were really trying to figure out your thought process. And so this guy, Dave, I still know him and I'm friends with him on LinkedIn. So hi, Dave. He asked me, how many tubes of toothpaste should we have in a store?
Interesting.
Right?
You said at least one.
Well, yeah. But it was more like, we don't necessarily need a number, but how would you go about figuring that out?
Right.
And like what kind of step A, step B, what are those processes?
What influences that?
Right, exactly. And same idea, right? Okay, let's see if we can reintroduce these sand frogs. Right? We need to know what layers, right? What is that first step? Okay, where are the sand frogs at? What kind of habitat do they like? Do we have any of those around here? And it just is that continuous, again, cycle of figuring that out and seeing where we could put those sand frogs or where we could put a new store, or where should we have whatever you want to have.
It's just amazing the different thought processes go in there. So you're introducing Python. You've had Python in there for, which is a huge plus, because I was very fortunate when I went through the geography program, like we mentioned off camera and microphone earlier, but I had I had computer programming. That was very useful in my GIS training. A lot of students don't have that. They go into a program and start doing. You don't think about those other electives in different schools that you can do things with that. But yet it's so important, as you mentioned earlier, having these different viewpoints, even within the same program. We mentioned earlier, I joked earlier about the economic geography, right? I would never have taken that. But even to this day, many years, we won't go into how many years ago that it was done, but I still enjoyed that class. I learned so much. So sometimes I think you have to step out your comfort zone, even if it's not something directly tied to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And even if you don't want to be a computer programmer, I think understanding the thought process in writing scripts is very useful in solving those problems.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing too is there's going to be a lot of changes coming, right? Yes. We're going to have a new datum. We're going to have some new coordinate systems, right? All those things are coming through. Yeah, exactly, right? And so there is now this really unique opportunity for those geomatic side of things, right? And that is a really old concept, right? And it's a very I mean, that is traditionally geography, right? That is.
It's old, but yet still modern.
Yes. And so that is one of the areas that I'm really excited that we're kind of realizing that, hey, we need to really think about this geomatics side and how can we maybe bring in some industry partners, bring in some leaders, bring in those subject matter experts and help let some students maybe be exposed to that. Yeah. And I will say we are really, really proud that we have partnered with the College of Engineering. So we're within the construction management program. There is a brand new bachelor's degree and a minor degree in land surveying and geomatics. So
nice.
Yeah, so we recognize that the land surveyors are one of the most vital jobs, occupations that you can have.
GPS did not get rid of those jobs, just so everybody knows. No.
And from a lot of the industry leaders in land surveying, GIS is becoming more and more part of their lives and everyday lives that they're doing. And so we really were able to partner with the engineering college and create that program. And that's where we're hoping to bring a little more geomatics in and really help, again, creating that workforce that the area needs.
That's excellent. And that, that is that forward thinking that says, hey, we got to think outside the box. It's beneficial not only to the geography students, but to the students in the other schools.
Exactly, yeah.
I think that's beneficial. You mentioned earlier, and I think we're kind of on the same page here, GIS, even though I'm a GIS professional, I've been doing GIS forever, I still think of GIS as a tool. It is a tool to answer questions. And it's a tool that's not just for geographers.
Right.
So you might have other disciplines that still can use this tool. I cannot tell you how many different people in the industry that I have worked with, and I find out what their background was. It was not GIS. It's something else. But they got into GIS, even if they transitioned, it was something they learned to do another job.
Right.
So I think that diverse opportunity is very important.
Well, and I would even say that is one thing that maybe it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, that I want to show more people how useful geography is. And so I've been lucky enough to partner with some nursing faculty, and we've done some work with the We Care Clinic down in East St. Louis and kind of mapping who's using that services. I'm working right now on a project with pharmacy, looking at could we potentially add a little more mental health training to new pharmacists, especially thinking about how many pharmacies have closed recently, especially in some of the rural areas that, sometimes those pharmacists are your first line of asking for help, right? Especially with some of those that are now doing all those minute clinics and the vaccines and, it's kind of becoming a bit of a health clinic. And so can we maybe see where those needs are the greatest and work with that? So that's another project that I'm involved in. And then the last one has just been so much fun. I got approached by faculty in the history department about trying to see if we can map out this man's claims from the 1800s. So before Illinois even became a state, and before we had the township and range system and gridded everything out, people were still buying and selling property, with the French and all the changes that were happening from the Louisiana Purchase.
To make sure that rock's still in the same place.
Exactly. And so it has been fascinating to look back at some of these old survey maps. And for most of us as geographers and GIS people, digitizing is not that hard. It's maybe not something we love to do, but for a historian, it is amazing that we can show on a map where this man held property. And so I have an interactive map that people can look at, and it's just been what a fun little project to work on. And it's just because I say yes. I could do that, just like that little article, I can research that. I can do that. It's no problem. So it's kind of funny again, knowing those tools, having that little bit of a background, you end up being able to figure things out. But it is really fun to kind of maybe use some of those sort of basic skills that, again, you maybe take for granted, but you can still really wow, this is seeing all these properties on a map. And
a map sounds very basic, and people don't realize the map is only basic if it's not of your topic or your interest. But when you need to know something, you need to see those relationships. How are you going to do that? Whether that map is digital or on paper, doesn't matter. You still need to see that. And it allows you to see those patterns. It allows you to see those relationships that you can't normally see in text or in numbers.
Right. Yeah.
So it is, it is very interesting that in the day and age that we live in and all the technology we have, how relevant a map still is for communication.
Exactly.
Very
And you know how many things can actually lead to more. One map can then potentially ask 4 or 5 different questions, right? That's the sign of great stuff, right? When you're like, well, I haven't answered everything.
Why are those two related?
Exactly.
What's going on there?
Exactly. So that to me, I think is what's been really fun to kind of do all of these different, be involved with a lot of these different college departments or colleges to sort of see kind of that spatial perspective and that geographical perspective is a really unique angle to look at things.
And I think maybe I don't know if it's GIS in general or the technology as a whole, but I feel like geography was always kind of to the side. It was that small group of people. I feel like it's getting more exposure. People are realizing the relevancy of it more. I'm going to give technology the kudos for that one because more people are exposed to it. You know, we have Google Maps on our phones and things like that, so people see these maps. It's not just the random knowledge that they run around
Right.
with.
Well, and even thinking about those Google Maps, like I am amazed when it can tell me when I'm about to stop because of traffic. And like you don't realize how many people have those maps available where you see red, right? I mean, it is really incredible.
It goes back to that data collection, how fast data's got to be collected and disseminated in an intelligible manner.
Exactly. So. And again, that's not for everything, right? We don't have to have all of those, every single map doing that, but it is really cool when it can do that.
It can save you a lot of time.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
So I think that we've covered a lot of ground. I like where this conversation is going. So now, what do you see some of the, especially in your role as a chair, and we'll look at SIUE's geography program since you're going to have that hands-on there.
Sure.
What are we kind of talked about what some of the challenges are? What do you need to do when you're putting together? I guess how many faculty do you have within geography department right now? That kind of gives an ideal size.
Sure. So including myself, we have 11, and then we have 1 instructor. And then we're really fortunate to have a few of our alumni come back and teach classes for us. So we have 3 or 4 of those kind of on a rotating basis on what they're, like for example, we have someone that does planning and she'll come in and teach a urban planning class for us. And so kind of, again, get students to understand code, right? To understand some of those, to go to a planning meeting and see what happens and to really see how influential, again, kind of that bigger perspective, right? Zooming out and see. And that class has led, gosh, a dozen students to become planners.
Awesome.
Yeah. So our alumni are a really great resource for us.
If you can see those potentials for, what does a job really entail? Getting a job description sometimes doesn't really tell you what's going to go on. And a lot of times it's who's writing that job description, and you get a very narrow focus on what that's going to entail. I've had a lot of jobs that you get out there and you're like, I don't think so. And then you get out, it becomes something totally different. Right. And it goes the other way around sometimes.
And I will say that is a really big challenge for myself because I have been at SAUE for I'm starting my 15th year. Applying for academic jobs is very different than applying for any other job. And so I feel really bad when students are like, well, what do I need to do to get jobs? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you're doing the classes, but like, I'm not in a position like you might be where you've had to hire people and maybe had to let people go or, encourage people to do something else. And it's a unique job as being a professor and especially as chairs because like, your material.
Right.
And I know a lot of people. I've got a nice network, but trying to get one student a job, I mean, it is definitely a difficult piece of that job for sure.
I can imagine. And I think it's always, no matter what, it's always going to be a challenge when you get into that.
Yeah.
Where do you see things going for SIU? Where do you see maybe the next 5 years? You got plans? You got what's the one? So let me kind of preface that. When I went to SIUE, well, we had Building 2, Building 3, which are not there. I mean, they're there. They're just not called that anymore.
They're renamed, yeah.
Right. So things have changed. But, Dr. Pearson, he's done wonders in his time there. when he came on, I know he helped drive a lot of changes in the labs, modernize the labs.
Yeah.
And that was because geospatial, GIS was really starting to progress at that time. He brought in some previous commercial experience, which was very useful.
Right.
And that helped drive the labs. And one of the things SIUE's geography department has done very well is you guys have carried on continuing those labs, keeping them modernized, and which gives the students a great learning environment to work with the latest technology.
Sure.
You don't have to say, well, our computers won't run on this. You have that stuff.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah.
So it provides a great environment to do. Those were some big changes there, how that's done. Even the last time I visited, just the way things were kind of laid out, I saw changes in that. The courses that were there, it's like, okay, there's a lot more course, that were available. When I was there, it was very limited sometimes in what the courses were that you're going to get access
Sure.
to. So you're definitely putting in a lot of time to think about how do we want to drive this? Where do you hope to see this in 5 years? And are there any major changes that you're anticipating?
So the good thing and the bad thing is that the geospatial technology is really helpful to us. And students really love it. I think, again, those engineering majors are looking at using GIS. We've got a couple business students that are coming in and using GIS. So our footprint for GIS is getting larger and larger. And that's a good thing, but yet it's also, we're kind of space restricted in our lab for reasons that are, we want to keep that faculty to student ratio as low as we can, right?
A lot of questions could come up, and you can only answer so many.
Exactly. And technology problems, all those things happen. So I think one of our, again, it's a good thing and a bad thing is that there's more and more interest. And so how do we continue to offer all of those other courses that we need to create that holistic approach, but yet still accommodate those folks that want just that technology side or adding in that technology piece? I definitely can see us doing more with geomatics in the future. One of the bigger, maybe not necessarily bigger concerns, but we have been really fortunate to have a lot of international students come through our graduate program. So we have a really good group of Nigerian students and Ghanaian students. We have a nice kind of steady flow from Nepal, and I think that we'll start having Bangladesh. But those students have had a really hard time getting visas. And so we have a very, very limited number of new international students coming in, which is somewhat benefit because we can sort of, okay, how do we want to really make sure we grow and can we accommodate everybody? But then it's also like we don't get that international, those cultural pieces, that other learning types of and perspectives. Exactly.
I think that's a good point because as a student, you don't think about that a lot of times is what the international students are. It's like, okay, so there's international students coming in. What does that mean? But, especially as I get older, I really can see a lot of this is as a student, you go there, you get to meet people with a different, like you said, perspective, a different cultural perspective that can help you think about a problem differently.
Exactly.
I was recently in San Diego at the Esri conference, and we had an Uber driver, and he very proud of his heritage, right? And he was going through and he's telling us about everything he's done, and he just talked the whole travel, and I was like, I just listened to this guy. He was very engaging, and he went on about the troubles of water. He's like, you don't think about it. We have to go and still walk the village of his home village, that they were still walking to get water, and that they were how they had to conserve it. And he says in the US, you're like, people don't see that. They don't understand that. And, he took a relative over to say, hey, you haven't been here, but let me show you what it's really like. And that changed their perspective and even changed their direction of education.
Yeah.
So having that international influence is a great opportunity that I think a lot of students miss out. When you get a chance to work with international students, meet them, learn about them. So I can understand the value of bringing more in.
Yeah. And like we've talked too, there is just so much data, but yet you kind of have to know where to look for it, and you have to know what's good data and what's not good data.
That's a very
right?
good point.
And so I think there's still that concept, right? Like, well, everything's mapped now. There's got to be data somewhere.
Right.
Well, yeah, there might be data somewhere, but it might not be in a shapefile form, or it might be really messy.
You may not know what the projection is.
Exactly right. So there's a lot to go into that. So I think, helping students with more of that like big data. We do a graduate level class on machine learning and big data, but I think we want to pull that maybe down into undergrad level too, just to kind of have students exposed to that. But I really just, we'll stay the course, because I think what we've done since 1950, 60s or so has worked really well. But I think it's just, again, talking with some industry leaders, hopefully that we can get some more international students back. And just sort of thinking about AI, thinking about all the data that's available, and how can we really continue to create that workforce that we have been. Cool. And I will say, my other one big goal is I want to get double monitors in our lab. So I'm not sure how I can make that happen, but
that's a huge plus.
In 5 years, let's hopefully have double monitors everywhere.
In the real world, if we don't have double monitors, you can't work.
I know.
Very interesting. Well, Stacey, I think at this point, we covered a lot of ground, and I think it's been good. And I think we could probably talk for another couple of hours, but let's wrap it up here. And I think that it's a good place for us to wrap it up. Maybe we'll have you back on the show, and we can talk a little bit more.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of topics that we can cover. That's what's nice. We get into these conversations, and they can go, and like you mentioned earlier, sometimes you're in that environment where you may decide you want to go out and get a PhD or something like that. But it's that sharing of ideas and concepts that I think is very beneficial to a lot of people. So hopefully we'll carry this on and do some more conversations.
It'd be great. I'd love it.
But I definitely appreciate your time.
Sure.
And we'll put it in the show notes. But can people learn more about the geography program at SIU Week?
Sure. I'd say they just can go onto our website. All of our faculty profiles are there. You can find my email. I'll make sure to give it to you and everything. But yeah, happy to talk more whenever.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put that in the show notes so
Okay.
people can reach out to you and learn more. Maybe we could expand the student numbers there.
That sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure, of course.
Thanks for joining us on the Spatial Connection. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite platform. You can also follow us on social media and our website. Do you know someone with a fascinating geospatial story? If so, send us a message. We'd love to hear about them. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep exploring the world through the lens of geospatial technology.